Cyril Ewart Lionel Grant was born in British Guyana on November the 8th, 1919. After leaving high school, Cy worked as a clerk in a magistrate's office, but was unable to afford the overseas travel to study law properly. However, following heavy losses in the early years of the Second World War, the Royal Air Force began to extend recruitment to non-white candidates, and Cy was one of the first to join up. After training as a navigator, Cy joined 103 Squadron, based at RAF Elsham Wolds, and became part of the 7-man crew of an Avro Lancaster. It was while returning from his third mission over Europe that Cy's Lancaster bomber was hit by enemy fire over the Netherlands.
Next thing we knew is that the plane blew up, and I was falling into space with searchlights all around. Now this was like a dream world. It's a very strange feeling.
Miraculously, Cy's parachute landed him safely in a field where he was taken in by a Dutch family, before being handed over to the German police. Cy spent the next 2 years as a prisoner of war at the Stalag-Luft 3 camp.
I was shot down in 43. At the end of 44, of course, we were aware that the Russians were approaching. We could see refugees fleeing, the German refugees running, going north, south, east, west. As the Russians approached, we knew that soon we could be liberated.
After the war, Cy returned home and spent the next 2 years studying law, eventually qualifying as a barrister in 1950. Struggling to find work in Guyana, he decided to relocate to London. But the London of the 1950s was very different to that which had been so keen to take in black recruits for the war effort just a few years earlier.
I applied right, left and centre. Never even a reply, because in every form, every application you had to say place of birth.
Partly to help improve his diction in court, and partly as a means to challenge the racism he was now facing, Cy decided to become an actor.
And for 1 year I toured in the theatre, playing the lead in a play, but twice nightly you learn about the theatre. You know, you learn how to walk on the theatre, how to use your voice and things like that. And it was touring around, so even if you made a boob in one town, it was not so bad. But then the year I knew my craft. I knew how to speak, how to move, and whatever. From that I applied to join the Laurence Olivier Festival of Britain Company.
After initial stage success in both London and New York, Cy broadened his talents by learning to sing and playing the guitar, which helped him earn work in various revues and cabaret acts, as well as spots on many BBC radio shows, right up to the late 1990s. By the mid-1950s, he was making regular appearances in various BBC television plays, and starred alongside Richard Burton and Joan Collins in the 1957 film Sea Wife.
It's funny. I never noticed her on the ship. All right.
You would not have recognized her then, Jack. Now she looks like a sea wife.
Huh?
A sea wife.
What's that?
When one refers to a sea wife, one implies a mermaid.
In 1958, Cy was invited to join the presenters of the BBC's weeknight current affairs programme Tonight, where he would deliver various news items in the form of a topical calypso.
Now let's look in the direction of Cy Grant.
Heartache today for the depths delights. No more of those glamorous nights. Heartache today for the depths delights. No more of those glamorous nights. So shed a tear for the deb of the year, who lost her vocation in mid-career. There's many a furrowed brow. How will the girls get husbands now? We bring you the news you ought to know, with tonight's topical calypso.
Tonight did much to boost Cy's career, making him the first black person to regularly appear on British television. However, he left the show in 1960, fearing he would become typecast as nothing more than a calypso singer. He returned to his stage roots, and in the 1964 musical The Roar of the Grease Paint, The Smell of the Crowd, he became the very first to perform a song that would go on to become a classic.
It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, feeling good.
The following year, Cy enjoyed further success as Othello at the Phoenix Theatre in Leicester, but more and more he was beginning to feel frustrated at the lack of quality roles available to black actors. Someone else who had been frustrated at black representation on British television was Gerry Anderson. In the early 1960s, Anderson had attempted to include black characters in an episode of Supercar, but had been made to remove them on the orders of American executives. Thankfully, by 1967, attitudes had begun to change, and his latest puppet sci-fi series, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, would be his first to incorporate black characters.
Melody Angel, you are clear for launch.
Spectrum is green.
Just as the Spectrum organisation was made up of officers wearing colour-coded uniforms, it was only fitting that the same diversity of colour should extend to the officers wearing those tunics. And just as Cy had been one of the very first black faces on British television, Lieutenant Green became one of the first prominent black characters on British children's television.
My role in Captain Scarlet, I played Lieutenant Green. He was a black character, which is, for the 1960s, quite a good thing, I think. And one must congratulate Gerry Anderson for having a black character on a space thing like that. But I was in the Space Command, Cloud Base, I think it was called.
Why don't they attack? Why don't they attack? Why don't the Mysterons attack?
Steady, Lieutenant. Steady, man.
I'm sorry, Colonel. It's just that I can't bear this waiting.
You mustn't let them break your nerve. They'll come soon enough.
Soon after completing Captain Scarlet, Cy made another small contribution to the Anderson universe, when he appeared in the uncredited role of Dr. Gordon in the 1969 movie Doppelganger.
Lord Sinclair, great pleasure to meet you again.
In 1971, Cy made his only appearance in a live-action ITC series, when he guest starred in the Persuaders episode Greensleeves.
I was most reluctant to come.
Well, but nevertheless, you came.
But only in the utmost secrecy. Nobody knows that I've left the country. I was told that you, personally, had endorsed this meeting. It was only your name that convinced me that it was worth the risk.
Following the Persuaders, Cy made a brief return to the legal profession, but gave it up for good after just 6 months.
Nothing ever happened.
Now he chose to focus his energies on combating discrimination via the arts, and in 1974 he founded the Drum Arts Centre in London to provide an artistic base for young black artists.
We need a trained investigator. He has to let himself be recruited. In Africa.
We found our man, Mr. Shaft. You.
His only other television acting role in the 1970s came with an appearance in an episode of the BBC police drama Softly Softly.
I'm just a copper who's written a report. If it's the 10 Commandments you want, better try somebody else.
You're just a copper, and you can't do the impossible.
Can you?
No. But don't you think we ought to try?
He then made his final big-screen appearance in 1976, when he played tribal leader Ra alongside Doug McClure and Peter Cushing in At the Earth's Core.
For as long as we can recall, our tribes have been divided. Now, with the help of our newfound friends, we are united. And we have the strength and the power to destroy once and for all those who have enslaved us. Death to the Mahars!
The following year, Cy stood down as the chair of drum and began a 2-year tour of a one-man play based on the novel-length poem Notebook on a Return to My Native Land. The book by Aimé Césaire was a study of European colonialism, something that Cy had first-hand experience of, and which he often cited as a major influence on his philosophy. The early 1980s would see Cy's final screen acting work. He had a recurring role in 4 episodes of Metal Mickey, and also played Josette Simon's father in both an episode of CITV teen drama The Squad and the BBC sci-fi series Blake's 7.
You were with Blake?
Yes, though it hardly seems to matter now, if it ever did.
If it mattered, Blake and the Liberator? I've been hearing reports for the last couple of years. You were magnificent.
Not from where I was sitting.
In 1981, Cy became chairman of the Concord Multicultural Festival, and over the next 4 years organised 22 events around the country in a celebration of the cultural diversity of modern Britain. In his later years, Cy continued to be politically and socially active, increasingly so through his writing. He wrote several books, including everything from a memoir of his World War II experiences to a history of the steel drum, as well as several collections of essays and poems. He also kept a website and blog, where his writing focused largely on cultural studies and philosophy rather than any of his acting work, with one notable exception.
Do I get a coconut?
If we ever get out of this, Lieutenant, I'll buy you all the coconuts you can eat.
Despite it being an extremely minor part of his career, Cy was always very happy to be known as the voice of Lieutenant Green, and often wrote articles on the historical significance of the character and the allegorical nature of the show's central struggle of good against evil.
It was very popular with my children at the time, of course, and It's been very popular with me because of the repeat fees over the years. And probably I earned more on that series than I did on anything I've ever done, even including film.
It was while researching his war memoir that Cy made contact with Just Klutwijk and his son Hans. Just had been 11 years old when he had witnessed the destruction of Cy's Lancaster, and he had spent many years trying to discover what had happened to the pilots after they had landed. In 2007, Just finally contacted Cy online, and in 2008, Cy travelled to the Dutch town of Nieuw-Vennep to meet Just in person.
Well, at long last. At long last.
During the course of their correspondence, they had discovered that the records of World War II airmen who hailed from the Caribbean were largely incomplete, and they set to work filling in the gaps. The result was the Caribbean Aircrew Archive website, which launched in 2006 in an attempt to fill in the lost history of the many West Indian volunteers who served in the RAF. And the website is still being updated to this day.
Young men died for peace, not for the perpetuation of war, in the hope that there would be no more war. So it should not be a war memorial, it's a peace memorial. Those young men died, and we fought for peace.
Cy Grant passed away on February the 13th, 2010, at the age of 90, and has received several posthumous tributes. Determined to keep awareness of his achievements alive, his family launched the Cy Grant Archive, with the aim of preserving various documents and photos dating back to the 1940s. The archive also runs an outreach program incorporating workshops and exhibitions, in the hope that younger generations will be inspired by his activities. He has also been the focus of 2 events at the BFI, and in November 2017 a blue plaque was unveiled in his honour outside his former home in Highgate. To Gerry Anderson fans, Cy Grant will be forever the voice of Lieutenant Green, but that's just one minor role in an acting career that was itself a minor part of an extraordinary life. While he often felt frustrated as a black man living in England, those frustrations drove him on to make the world around him a better place. Not just for people like him, but for everybody. He may not have known it, but he accomplished more in his life than most people could ever dream of. And those accomplishments continue to resonate down through the generations, almost 100 years after the birth of Cy Grant.
It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.